Welcome in, everyone. We are back for another episode of the People Over Prompts podcast. This is the place where we're talking about the future of teamwork in this age of AI. I'm your host here almost always, Brian Milner. And today I've got a good friend of mine here, Mr. Hunter Hillegas, that's with us. Hunter, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me. I like the intro music there.
Thanks. Yeah. Gotta keep my rockin' roots,
I love it.
evident
I
there
love
in
it.
some way, shape, or form. So we're here today to kind of continue this dialogue and continue this discussion about how AI is really changing, how we work really, and how teams kind of work together. And I wanted to have Hunter on because there's this particular kind of annoyance. I don't know if you call it annoyance or a tax or whatever that I think that we all are kind of encountering when we use AI to help with coding and other tasks like that, which I'm just calling the verification tax here. Basically, we've all been there where you've been working through something and something spits out code or text or whatever it is that you're trying to get from an AI. And it just is, it's not that it's completely wrong, it's that it's slightly wrong. And it's that verification of having to pick through every last bit of it and make those small tweaks that starts to feel a little bit like a tax. I saw the stat, Hunter, that came from a 2025 Stack Overflow kind of survey that they did. It said 84% of developers are saying that as of today, they use AI tools in some way, shape, or form. I mean, that's huge. 84% are using AI tools in some way, shape, or form. But the same survey said that only half of them say that they trust the output. So I'll just start with that. Like, what's your take on that? Do you identify with that? Do you think has that been your experience, or is that kind of more the setup?
I think I filled out that survey. So I can't remember what I wrote down, but I do remember it. Yeah, it's interesting, and it also I should probably preface everything that I'm going to say on this episode with we're recording this halfway through 2026, and this stuff, this AI, the AI industry and the tools that they're providing, especially for people making software, it's changing faster than anything I can remember in my entire career. So, whatever we say may turn out to be a little bit different down the road. We'll see. So I'll preface it with that. I do think, especially I really started in earnest with coding, AI coding tools, kind of right after ChatGPT came out and the original 3.5 OpenAI API was released, and it was like day one, wow, this is amazing. I don't even know how this is possible. This is just a total mind blowing situation. And then day two, it's like, oh, look at that code. Ooh, that's not so good. I mean, it kind of works. The button is purple and in the left corner, but yikes.
Yeah.
So it's of course that's real. I mean, I guess I would say that that's true with lots of software, right? If you don't have tests, and we talk about automated tests and testing and a lot of the work that we do. So I know that's familiar. We could talk more about that stuff, but you need to be able to verify that the work you're producing is correct.
Yeah.
And with the AI tools, that you need some rigor, and we can talk about specifically what that looks like and the kind of experiences that I've had. I'll also say that as the tools have gotten better, my level of trust has gone up over time,
Hmm.
not down. So, I guess maybe not maybe predictable, but definitely that's been my experience.
Well, I want to press in on that for a second because I agree. I think mine is the same way. Like my level of trust has grown. However, I I'm curious what your take would be. How much of that do you think you'd attribute to just the models getting better at what they do, and how much of that do you attribute to your knowledge that's grown about how to really interact successfully with it, how to give
Yeah.
it the right context?
Yeah. That's a good question. Of course, the models have gotten better, and also not just the models. I mean, especially, usually I'm thinking in terms of the big U.S. frontier lab models like OpenAI, Anthropic, maybe to a lesser degree Gemini from Google, and less so some of the open source models and other stuff that I've played with, but don't use as much on a day-to-day basis. They've definitely gotten better, especially in terms of OpenAI and Anthropic with Codex and Claude Code, respectively. They've also built these harness tools, which
Hmm.
are a really important part of the improvement situation with the outputs. The harnesses really know how to get the most out of the models, and those things really do go hand in hand. And so I think that's been a pretty important part of the leap that we've seen in agentic software engineering, especially in the last 6 months or so through the very end of 2025 up until now. Um, but you ask a good question because, yes, I think, myself and others that are using these tools often, we have learned quite a bit about where they're good, where they're bad, how to prompt them. And maybe you and I even had this conversation, I can't remember, but, back
Hmm.
in 2023, 24, as this stuff was really exploding, the idea that we start to see job listings for like prompt engineering. And I think,
Yeah.
there were a lot of people in software that kind of chuckled at that. Like, that's not a real job. What are you talking about? um, and I get that, it's good for a laugh. But the one thing that I've learned probably over everything else in working with these tools is that, like, maintaining the right amount of context, the right level of context at the right level of specificity is really key and maybe the most important thing. So I think it's a good question. I guess to long way around to answer your original question. I think it's probably a combination of both, right? Of course, the tools are getting better. They seem smarter. Um, and that's a benefit, but also we're getting better at using them.
Yeah. Um, that verification process of it. I mean, I don't. I I'll tell the story to everyone who's listening. But like when I first started to do that kind of coding, and I was going back and forth between the different I had subscriptions to a couple of services, and I wanted to make because you'd run out of tokens on one, and
Yeah.
you just, oh, well, hey, I still got some over here, so I'll use those tokens. And it was kind of that going back and forth, and it was, very quickly apparent to me that like there's a better way of doing this. Like I'm sitting here between these agents, going back and forth, and basically what we would call an orchestrator now, just kind of taking the output and then going back to it and saying, "We'll do this now next." Um, and now there's enough of the harnesses on top of that that you can have AI orchestrators that can pass things back and forth. And the thing I always struggle with is um, the when you build into that workflow testing, there's the question of what's the practical amount that's needed. I think there's the verification's important. The whole thing that we've borrowed in the AI industry from the whole Reagan years of trust but verify. I think that's very ingrained in what we're trying to do. But how much verify? Like, do I just have the core testing? Does it work? Does it come out okay? I run through all my regression tests and it comes out okay. Do I then have also a security engineer kind of tester that has to check for flaws and holes? Do I have gosh, I don't know. There may be a legal kind of testing to make sure I'm in compliance with various law.
Yeah.
There could be no end to this, and that's what I struggle with sometimes: is how much testing is enough testing? How much verification do you really need?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like so many of these things, it depends, right? There's a sliding
Mm,
scale depending on the risk that you take on by not testing, right? So if you're writing software to create legal briefs and the judge is going to hold you in contempt if you cite made up cases because you didn't test your software enough, that's probably a higher bar than, you built an app to manage your kid's basketball schedule or something, right? It's
right,
like, well, I didn't show up to practice on time. That is bad, but it's not as bad as, getting fined by a judge.
right,
So
right.
there's a sliding scale.
Yeah, yeah, and that brings up a good point too, because like it makes you know part of this podcast is kind of trying to re-examine at a much higher level whether we're even approaching these questions from the right standpoint. And trust is a good example of that. Saying trust but verify. What is that? What is trust with AI? Like, is that, are
Right.
we even using the wrong metaphor there, the wrong word to say trust with an
Yeah.
AI system?
Yeah, I mean, this is we're getting into the philosophical here, I guess, somewhat,
Right.
but,
Yeah.
it is a good question, right? And I know that there are some people that get very offended when you say things like, the model is smarter or dumber because 'cause they're not humans, right? We like to anthropomorphize these things. It's just part of what we do.
Yeah.
But they aren't humans, right? So it's like they don't have intent in the way that a software engineer on your team has intent and all these different motivations that, contribute into the stuff they do on a day-to-day basis. So trust, I is that the right word? That's a good question. I don't know if I have the answer to that one, but it is. I do think all of the vocabulary that we use around those things, we basically just take in a team member and apply all the same kinds of nouns and verbs that we would to their work product that we do these models, and that may not always be appropriate.
Yeah. Well, what's been your experience? Because I know you've worked, in your career, you've worked with human developers, you've worked with AI developers, you work in combinations of these two things. So I'm kind of curious how that has shifted the workflow process for you. What's different about working with some combination of AI agents or AI agents with smaller teams of people?
Yeah. I mean, not to sound like too much of a shill for big AI, but I'm getting more work done than I ever have in
Mm,
my entire career in terms of output. And I don't mean like lines of code output, though that might be true. I don't know. I don't measure that. But in terms of features shipped, users delighted, the kinds of metrics that I actually do care about.
yeah.
Um, and that's because I am able to use these tools to, leverage what they're good at, which is not everything. And there's a whole kinds of different tips and tricks that we can talk about if you want to getting some better results. And again, what they are varies quite a bit over time. But I I have found, especially, well, it also does vary by the type of project in terms of how effective they can be. They are better at certain things than others. And then there are certain models that are better at certain things than others as well. Different focuses that the training regimes have put into place for some of these different models. So there are some specific details there. But generally
Hmm.
speaking, I have found them to be a tremendous boost in terms of my output, especially in the last 6 months, since I guess November of 25, or a little bit longer than that, I guess then. But when we saw, was it? No, I'm losing track of my version numbers. I think it was like Opus 4.5 and
Yeah.
GPT 5.3, maybe, or 5.2. Anyway, which were both, which is kind of funny too how these big labs so closely track in terms of their big releases and their capabilities, right? It's like they both came out within weeks of each other. Both were a big step forward, um, and they've continued since then. But it's been really a transformative thing for me. I enjoy it. And maybe there might be some sort of, it might be growing some bad habits too. I have definitely found myself, because I'm these days I'm using Codex more than Cloud Code. I do use both. Um, and I think what I'm going to say applies to both. But I have found that I we're going out to dinner or something, and I'll be like, "Oh wait," talk to my wife. Like, I just need 5 more minutes. It's because I have to get my prompt in before I leave, so it's
Yeah.
working while I'm out doing something else, right?
Yeah.
Is that healthy? Question mark. Also, both of these tools, you can access them on your phone, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, maybe I'll just shoot off a quick little prompt to like get this thing working so that it's done when I get back. Which, again, debatable if that's an entirely positive thing. I mean, there is more work being done, but there's also something to be said for just touching grass and trying to put all this other stuff out of your mind. So
Yeah.
it's a double-edged sword, I guess, in some ways. But I am having a ton of fun. I can say that for sure.
Yeah, I agree, and like I've gotten caught up in that same thing before, where it's like, I'm sure there's going to be people listen to this and go, oh yeah, I identify with this, but like I've I've had those 5-hour token refresh windows where like you're pushing towards the edge of it and you're like, I want it to kick over one more time and then I'll
Yeah.
send something in big and then I can go to bed, like that kind of thing. So yeah, I've been right there with you as far as that's concerned. I think that it kind of has this weird kind of new pressure
Yeah.
that's you're not doing it all the time, but you have these little windows that you need to be there to keep it rolling.
Yeah. And I've also found that the thing that I've been doing more recently too is sort of building loops on top of loops. So basically,
Mm,
like having threads in my agents that manage other threads, and so that they can kind of take action on the little decision making questions that I don't have to supervise them quite as much.
yeah,
Um, which is also, we're getting very meta here. I was like,
sure,
next time I have loops on tops of loops on top of loops. It's like,
yeah,
how far down does it go? But it is pretty interesting and amazing. And the thing that I continue to be impressed by trying new stuff that I just would never have guessed would work, and it does. And
mm,
that's still kind of someone that's been doing all this software stuff for a long time. It kind of blows my mind. You know, my first computer had 64K of RAM. That's K, kids, for those not for those of you that uh, were born after the year 2000.
yeah,
Um, and now, we're being able to just talk to a computer and it can go off and do all this amazing stuff. And of course, it does dumb things sometimes, but
sure.
it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and I think getting, circling back to that verification kind of gap, I'll give kind of example that, I mean, as I said, I always struggle with how much is enough, and I don't know if you've had this scenario happen to you, but I know there've been times when I've designed some kind of testing agent that's testing things, and uh, the way the system's set up, it can reject something and send it back to the other developer, and the developer has to fix whatever it is. And there could be several rounds of back and forth with this tester. And I know I've been following along the dialogue to see what's going on, and there have been times when the tester will kick it back for a reason that I'll look at as a human and say, "Gosh, that's really picky."
Yeah,
Like technically, yes, it's a fail, but I mean,
right.
come on, we could live with that.
Yeah,
And
yep.
that's kind of the line that I wonder, how do we solve that problem? How do we solve for,
Human taste.
yeah, yeah, having that little bit of judgment to be able to say, that's really not that big of a deal. That's okay.
Yeah, it's a good question too. I mean, I part of it I think is we just need some better models, bigger models. But
Mm,
also, I am constantly, for most of these agentic tools, there's some kind of file or sets of files that it can read to get rules and information about your project, whether it's like agents.md or claude.md. Um, I'm constantly updating those with the basically, like, I actually have a codex task that's like, go through everything that we worked on this week and make suggestions to update these files based on the things I told you, to
yeah,
try
smart.
to have it get smarter, which does help sometimes and sometimes it doesn't. And there's yesterday, I think it was, I was like, I have a reference page and I need to like port this over to another system. It should look identical. And you can look at both,
Yeah,
like make them look the same. And it's like, great, I'm done. And I look at it, I'm like, this looks the same to you. Like this button's over here and this one's like crap clipped. And I'm like, what's happening here? So
yeah.
they definitely can make mistakes on both sides of the I got it finished, go check it out. And also the minutia that a human tester would be like, we got to ship this. This tiny little thing doesn't matter.
Well, I think we're all kind of at that frustrated point a little bit that you see how much it can do, and it's the limitations that you're like, man, it really can't. It can't go that a little extra. I mean, we're on that frontier moment of kind of like Carpathian, the second brain, and him saying I'm a loop designer now, and not
Yeah, yeah,
like you were talking about. And I think it's sort of at that point where people who are doing this are brushing up against that rough edge and
yeah.
saying, can I almost hack it? Like I know it doesn't have general intelligence. I know it
Right.
can't really remember. I know it really can't reason and think. But are there ways that I can trick it or approximate it to do enough of that it really helps and solves maybe that kind of problem that that kind of thing, that kind of error is okay. You can let that through. I had one the other day where this was not a tester thing, but it was the agent was expecting me to approve something, and it was looking for an exact phrase with a
Oh,
period at the end.
mhm.
And I put the phrase in, but without the period. And then it kicked back to me and said, "Well, I can't go forward because you didn't put the period on the end." And it's that kind of thing that you just pull your hair out and you think, "I just lost what 10,000 tokens or 5,000 tokens from that exchange of verifying it twice and everything else." And it's that kind of thing that we're like, why can't we just give it that little edge of intelligence
Yeah.
to know what's practical.
And it is also funny to me that in however many years into this being like generally available tools, we still have to say stuff like try really hard. Don't give
Right.
up. It's like, okay, buddy, like good work. It's
Right.
like it's kind of silly that that's a thing, but it does sometimes help.
Yeah. I actually I don't have the stat here on me, but I saw an article. And this has been a while actually that I saw this, but it was basically talking about how much it cost OpenAI for people to
Mm.
say thank you.
Yes,
And
I think I read that someplace too, which is like amazing, right?
yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
it's tokens, and and we're trained to be polite as humans, and it's reflecting kind of a human personality, and so we feel
right,
like I don't want to hurt their feelings. I want to tell it did a
right.
good job, you
And
know.
I'm like 1% Skynet might happen, but like if Skynet does happen, I want to be noticed like one of the nice people.
Right, right. I wasn't one of the one that said "f off" to you every day
Yeah,
when you didn't when I.
exactly. Exactly.
Right. Yeah, no, I completely get that. That's a whole nother episode because like I think we could get into like the personality of, you know, uh, do you treat your AI, like I don't know, almost like, an indentured servitude, to
I know
you.
people that do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not human, so you're not really going to hurt anyone's feelings. And,
Right.
I don't know. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting time, and I don't have any solutions to this verification tax. I think I mean, my only solution is kind of the thing you said, which is periodically, almost like a retrospective, have moments where you can look back and say, all right, well, what did we learn from this? Like, is there anything that I could do differently? Is there anything you could do differently so that we can build that into the skills? Is there anything we can take away
Yeah.
from this so that next time we don't go through this back and forth of, hey, there wasn't a period there, you know?
Yeah, totally. I think that trying to, because there's all kinds of little knowledge bits in between in these conversations that we're having outside of the product they generate, the code or whatever they're making for you. There is all this little knowledge that sometimes gets sucked up and applied, but sometimes doesn't unless you have a process to go do that. And it's funny, I didn't really think of it as being sort of akin to a retrospective, but it kind of is, right? So it's like
Yeah.
applying these techniques and tools that have been used on human software teams for why not apply as many of those to these as you can, right? You might need to tweak them some, but it makes sense.
Yeah. And it's entirely a different animal because, you're not having to deal with safety and trust issues and that kind of stuff, right? I mean, it's just all data. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I think that the concept of, periodically looking backwards and saying, hey, what do we learn from this last little bit and how can we do it better? I think still applies and can help in these situations and give you that little hint of almost intelligence, in
Yeah,
there.
and this sort of opportunity for self improvement, again, self, I know people will get mad at me for using self. This is not a thing, it's not a person, it's a thing, but
Yeah.
still, you understand what I mean.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. So if someone came to you and said, "Hey, I'm doing this stuff," and in my experience, the verification part of this is, it just takes too long, and it's taken all my tokens. Like I'd rather spend that on building new things. What would you, where would you be inclined to look first to try to solve that problem for them and help them to get the amount of verification that they need, but not waste cycles on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the tokens are not infinite part of this probably changes my answer somewhat.
Yeah.
Um, because it's a constraint, and it's a real constraint, and who knows what's going to happen in the future as far as what tokens cost and whatnot. I think we're living in an era of at least partial token subsidy, and we'll see what happens over time. Um, well, I mean, I guess there's probably a bunch of different ways you could attack this, right? So first, of course, is to just sort of ask what level of testing is needed for what you're trying to do, right? So don't
Yeah.
over test just because you can. I mean, if you have the tokens for it and you want to, then I guess that's fine. But uh, given that you do have constraints, just make sure that you're trying to attack this at the appropriate level. I mean, I have been the benefit of many years of doing software, so written many, 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 many tests by hand, and have some sense of what I think needs to be tested and at what level. Not always right, but at least a starting point. And there's a lot of tools to tell you, oh, our code has, X% of coverage or whatever. These are just sort of classic software development tools that you can point at, no matter who wrote the tests, whether it's the AI or humans, to get a sense of, okay, this is, X% covered, and that's what we deem acceptable. And this core module where the really important business logic is 100% covered. And then, the about screen is not, but we can live with that. I mean, you can make some sort of strategic decisions about what the most important thing is. And I will say this might be heretical, but you could still write your own tests, human being. You don't have to
Yeah.
have the AI do them, right? And I know some people that do that, that are do a sort of traditional red green kind of style where they are having the humans write the tests and then having the AI system implement the features, knowing that they have put a fair amount of rigor into the tests themselves. They know that the tests are what they want them to be, and specify the requirements in the way that is appropriate. So there's a few different ways you could attack this, or I guess you could just go work for one of the foundation labs where you get unlimited tokens. You don't have to worry
Yeah,
about
right.
it.
That must be nice. Well, we're almost out of time. I want to close with one big question for you though, and so follow along with me on this one. It might take a little bit of explanation, but um, if you had a high school buddy, an old high school buddy, or family member, or somebody come to you who is, fairly technical, maybe not a programmer, but in and around software for part of their lives, and they're interested in this kind of stuff. They'd like to get their hands dirty on this. What's one lesson that you feel like you've learned over even just like the last 6 months, that if you were going to give someone advice to start off and hey, whatever you do, make sure of this, what would be your biggest piece of advice for someone like that?
That's a good question. Um, Gosh, I'm gonna have this long, indeterminate pause here as I try to think of a
Yeah,
good answer.
don't mean to put you on the spot. I
No,
just
no, it's fine. It's a
Yeah.
good question. I'm just trying to think of which way I want to take this because, I mean, there's the sort of very pat meta answer, which is like, this is supposed to be fun. So at least in the scenario I'm imagining here, this person isn't like trying to, feed their family with whatever they're creating here. They're just trying to
Right.
explore and, like a hobby. So, just try to remember this stuff is supposed to be fun. I guess, I mean, this is a very sort of a random one,
Yeah.
but it works better than I think. So I'll just throw this one out there. What
Hmm.
I've found, which surprises me because I'm a very much I'm going to write a prompt. I'm going to like actually make sure that the punctuation is correct and that it's
Hmm.
grammatically, if there are spelling mistakes, like and all of the stuff that I would do when I would be writing for other humans, I've actually found that you can literally turn on the voice dictation mode and kind of ramble and it will figure it out. It's really good at that. So you can even with your ums and the ahs, you're like, oh, go back. Actually, I don't think it should be green. Maybe it should be green. I don't know. Green's good, right? Okay, let's just do green. I mean, this total rambling, incoherent mess, and it does it. And that's
Yeah.
kind of amazing to me. So for someone that isn't steeped in the sort of software development lifecycle world, that they just want to play with this stuff, that might, just try it. Try just talking to it and see what you get out of it. You might be surprised at how well it does. I certainly
Yeah.
was because like I said, my inclination is to go the opposite and be very, very specific.
No, I think that's a great tip, and I think you're absolutely right that some people don't even know that there is a voice mode that you can activate. And it can talk back to you too if you really would rather have kind of that conversational style. If it really bothers you that you'd have the ums and ahs and stuff typed out, you could use something like Whisper as well
Yeah.
that would just translate and pull all that stuff out for you. Um, I I I I had to get used to. like I prefer typing. I prefer typing than to talking.
Same.
And I had to get used to the fact that I don't have to go back and
Yeah.
fix all the spelling errors or anything else.
Right.
Like anything that like I double tap a key on accident or whatever,
Yeah.
it knows what I meant to say. And you kind of have to go back a little bit and say, well, what's my point here? I'm communicating with this thing. Does it understand what I meant? Yeah, it understands what I meant. So it didn't have to be spelled perfectly.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of akin to this is to say,
Hmm.
don't waste time, going back and taking out the double T that you put in on accident. It knows what you meant. It'll figure it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It is. I totally, and that's just, that's just not the way that I usually work. So it's been something where I'm like, I'm the kind of person that if I misspell something in a Slack message after I hit enter, I'll go back and fix it.
Oh
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Me too. Me too. Yeah.
so
If I see it for sure that, I'll
yeah,
go ahead and change it.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, Hunter, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been great conversation, and thanks for sharing some of your experience and just trials and errors with us here as we kind of all explore this together.
Yeah, of course, Brian. Thanks for having me, and congrats on the new show.
Thanks. Well, that was just a great conversation, and I really appreciate Hunter coming on. Hunter and I are colleagues and have been coworkers in the past, and we've worked together on building classes. We worked together at Mountain Goat, and I've always really, really respected his, um, so much about him, his intelligence in this area and his skill and his work ethic. So I just really appreciate all that he's done, and really thank him for coming on and helping us to get that little bit of a different perspective, maybe on how this thing is headed. So thanks again to Hunter for doing that. We're still a new podcast. I mean, this is only we're still in the first 5 episodes here of this podcast. So what I'd ask from you, this is really important at this early stage, is if you can like and subscribe to this on whatever podcasting platform you listen to this show in. Really, really would appreciate appreciate that. Excuse me. And if you would also, be so inclined, we'd love it if you would tell a friend or a work colleague about it if you found this to be useful in your line of work and useful to the kind of work you do. We'd like this to grow into a community of people who are trying to figure this stuff out, and maybe our collective brains together can, kind of come up with some ways to do this that we might not have come up with otherwise. So, yeah, we'd love to invite more people into this growing community here for this show. This show also does appear on our website. It's at agilityevolved.com/podcast. You can find all our past episodes there. The show notes for our podcast are going to be there. Any other links or anything that you might need to find about the show, we'll keep them there on that website. So agilityevolved.com/podcast. And as always, I would really, really love to hear from you. I really appreciate, after the first few episodes here, we've gotten some good feedback from you guys, the listeners. And that means so much to me that I hear from you, and it means so much just to know what's working and what's not working and what you'd like to hear next, who you'd like to hear from next. All those things are really vital, I think, to this being the kind of show you want to stay subscribed to and listen to over and over again. So feel free to send me an email, brian@agilityevolved.com. That's my website, agilityevolved.com. And speaking of that company, agilityevolved.com, I'll just make a little shameless plug here for it. We don't have any advertisers or anything on this show. Really, now Agility Evolved is our sponsor, my own company. And what I just say is, if you're interested in taking any kind of a Scrum class, a certified Scrum Master, a product owner, or advanced versions of those classes, I would just say, check out our website, agilityevolved.com. Look at the upcoming classes that we have there. Really appreciate you doing that. And, we can spend a couple days together talking through some of this stuff. Every class I teach is injected now with AI and how to use that practically in our work here. So I'd love to meet you in person or virtually over a Zoom call, and we can talk through some of this stuff then as well. So that's about all we got for you for this week. So thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time on another episode of the People Over Prompts podcast.